think AI can be really helpful to give the marketers a leg up. So I use AI, for instance, if I'm like, okay, I've got ideas, like my biggest challenge or what takes me the longest is not the ideas, but it's how to piece it together to where it makes sense for everyone else but me, kind of thing, right?
And welcome to a new episode of Digital Coffee Marketing Brew. And I'm your host, Brett Dicer. You can please subscribe to this podcast on all your favorite podcasting apps. Leave a 5-star review. It really does help with the rankings. And now you can leave a comment on Spotify because why not? I mean, we love comments. Anyways, I have with me Caroline, and she is a business leader and with aligning marketing initiatives effectively to achieve overarching business goals. She is a seasoned marketer and communication expert with a 13-year successful track record on blending the visionary with just your business practices and your sales goals. But this week as well, we're going to be talking about building a market team on a scrappy budget because we're all on that plane ride of, well, can you cut the marketing budget? Can you be as lean as possible? But welcome to the show, Caroline.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, the first question that's all my guests is, are you a coffee or tea drinker?
Ooh, I just stopped drinking coffee a couple months ago. So I think at heart I am. I'm not a tea person very much, but I've now stopped it all.
Stopped it all. So is it just like straight water and that's all you
Mostly
do?
water. I'm trying to get on the matcha train. It's not working as well as coffee, but
Fair enough. I mean, I'm an all drinking person because
sure.
I still love coffee, but it
As
has
you
to be a
should.
specific coffee.
Yeah. What's the specific coffee?
I usually go for like the more expensive ones because they're actually better. I
Yeah.
mean, if I have to, I'll go to Starbucks, but it's not never my first choice. It's always well, there's one. I don't know the area I'm in, and there's no other coffee shops around.
Perfect. Love that.
Anyways, I gave a brief summary of your expertise. Can you give our listeners a little bit more about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in marketing communications for 13 years, like you said. Throughout my career, I just always had a very heavy hand in kind of all the things with marketing, just and working with a lot of companies that had a very dynamic marketing team. So they didn't have, it wasn't multiple departments within the marketing team. It was a lot of the times myself, maybe one or two other people. And the size of the company did not match that. So it was a very interesting background. But about 3.5 years ago, actually, I think even before that, while I was still in house, I started to recognize the patterns and look at the patterns I was experiencing in my career around marketing, the way businesses viewed marketing, treated marketing, and also the experiences I was having in house as an in house marketer from outside marketers. And that's essentially what formed Cultivate. I really saw this gap that existed between the way business leaders viewed marketing, but also the way that marketing support was delivered. And so that's what I'm now out here doing. And so ultimately, Cultivate Communications specializes in developing and optimizing marketing functions by aligning sales, marketing, and brand to create effective strategies and create and increase revenue, increase efficiencies across the team, and then ultimately grow the brand.
All right. So, what are some fundamental skills should the leader of a scrappy marketing team or the marketing team should possess to ensure efficiency and effectiveness? Because I mean, we're all in that. Can you, and as always, businesses always cut the marketing budget first. So
Yep.
how do you become efficient and effective?
Yeah, I think first things first, be adaptable because when you are in an environment that is needing to be scrappy, you have to design everything in a way and the way you operate to be adaptable and nimble as best as you possibly can. That said, you do have to create structure in your marketing system. And I look at marketing from all angles, everything under the marketing umbrella. So the easiest way to work with limited resources and be scrappy is to see how it all connects together, right? And so what that looks like is developing marketing strategies where you can repurpose things, where content can work for one channel and on multiple channels. Identifying and isolating sometimes pieces of your marketing puzzle that are going to take more time, effort, energy, money, whatever that looks like, and using that to fuel other pieces of your marketing channel. So that those are just a couple ways to do that, but ultimately structure, having your team in place, being really aware of what the priorities are and then saying back to the business leaders, especially if you're the marketing team working with business leaders that may make marketing a little bit more challenging for whatever reason. They may not understand what goes on behind the scenes. It's really important for you to say, we have all these other priorities. These are the processes that we have in place. And you keep throwing curveballs at us. So we need to either go back and put focus for you on what's needed for marketing. And that way we can structure our team a little bit better, or we need to completely reprioritize some things or operate a little bit differently.
And on the content side, is it more focusing on the evergreen content because that can be either repurposed or refreshed a little bit more than kind of just the seasonal or just the one-offs? Because I feel like budgets are kind of like, okay, what can I actually do? And evergreen is usually the one that's easiest to repurpose and use longer than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, you could look at it that way. I see any content that's created, honestly, as an opportunity to potentially repurpose in some shape or form, as long as it's still relevant to the brand and what the messaging is and things like that. But ultimately, when you're creating content, even older campaigns and seasonal campaigns, there's usually a core message there that can then be repurposed. Obviously, if it's a seasonal campaign, you did a winter campaign, let's say, and then you're now in summer, some things have to be updated, right? But I think the evergreen content is great because you can squeeze a lot of juice out of one particular evergreen content. And it's just a matter of finding fresh ideas from that same thing. But I think it doesn't really, to me, it doesn't have to be either or evergreen or campaign. I think that's where the strategic planning comes into play and the structure comes into play, because if you know what's ahead, you can understand how you can create content. So if you're planning a marketing strategy where you are, again, let's say you're focused on an evergreen campaign about, how to maximize your marketing team, whatever, if you have a scrappy marketing team, right? That can stand alone as an evergreen content. But let's say, okay, December's coming up. So then you can create additional content leveraging the first evergreen content that says, okay, how do you maximize your team during heavy vacation schedules or whatever, right? I'm just coming up with some random examples, but there's ways to do that. And then even by vice versa, if you created the winter thing first, you can then generalize it to make it evergreen. So I think that it's more so, what is the core message you're trying to convey and what's the core value you're trying to get out there. And then I think you can get creative with all the different ways to go about it.
And how do you identify and leverage the unique competitive advantages of a small marketing budget or a toned down marketing budget, depending on what the size of your business? And is that also leveraging more AI because you're a small marketing team? AI is prevalent and it's a little bit easier to use given that you have a small budget.
Yeah, I think AI can be really helpful to give the marketers a leg up. So I use AI, for instance, if I'm like, okay, I've got ideas, like my biggest challenge or what takes me the longest is not the ideas, but it's how to piece it together to where it makes sense for everyone else but me, kind of thing, right? And so AI can be really helpful with that. AI can also present different ideas. It can lay out a strategy, it can organize thoughts. Um and then of course there's always arguments about whether or not AI should be used for generating content. I err on the side of best you don't. If not, you vet it through. I think in terms of the competitive advantages, you know, the scrappier the team, yes, it's hard on the marketers, but I think if you set up the right structure, if you really optimize it correctly, the scrappier the team, the more connected they have to be to survive. So they have to be so connected to the business leaders. They have to be so aware of what's going on. They have to become a well-oiled machine because they don't have room for error. They don't have a high margin of just kind of letting things fall to the wayside or things getting overlooked. They have to have That's where again you optimize your team. It doesn't matter the size of your team. I've operated with one or two people. I've operated with just myself managing a very large team. Or sorry, very large company. So, I think that's where the competitive advantage could be is because if you connect the greatest brands, the reason they're getting so much attention, I mean, there's multiple reasons to be fair, but a huge chunk of the reason, if you really analyze it, is they're showing up everywhere. And that's a challenge, right? Because if you're showing up everywhere, it takes a lot of resources to really go heavy on some things. But if you refine your focus because your team is scrappy, it makes you go do perform at that channel very, very well. And then you can scale up from there and then get really smart with how you scale up from there. But if you're looking at other brands that are essentially everywhere, they're doing the same thing just on across the board on every channel. So they're just repurposing a bunch of different things. So if you have that kind of mindset, obviously maybe at a smaller scale, I'm not saying everyone should be everywhere, but I think that's where you start to get into this groove where okay, everything's going to be connected and then let's determine what our baseline is. Once we have that going, let's introduce another channel. And then once we have that going, we introduce another. And then we just keep kind of growing and growing from there.
And is this part kind of the part of importance of creating like a clear marketing targets and goals so you can like make your team efficient in delegation because it's not or yourself because I mean like you said you've done it by yourself. Is it like that part of things because if you have a plan it's easier to effectively delegate you or your teammates or your people under you.
Yeah, for sure. I think that that's really the first step because if you don't have that, then you're just basically identifying, like, okay, here's an idea I have. Let's execute it. And that keeps happening over and over. So it starts to become very inefficient. But if you're like, okay, this is our goal, these are our marketing goals, these are our sales goals, these are our business goals, you can then be more intentional with where you're putting your efforts that then lend itself better to you being able to plan ahead for things. So when I'm creating strategies, I'm thinking ultimately what's the bigger vision goal? What's our immediate short-term goal? So if a company is like, because everyone wants more sales, everyone wants more brand awareness, but you do at some point, especially with a scrappy budget, have to prioritize. So if let's just say sales is the first budget, that's going to, or sales is the first primary goal in the short term, that's going to indicate what and how and where you're putting your marketing efforts, right? So it's like if you're doing sales but you're doing brand awareness campaigns, there's a disconnect, right? So that's how you start planning accordingly, but I think having that strategy up front is going to be it takes away so much of that guessing and that legwork. So then as the process evolves, you can come together as a team with the business leaders and say, based on our goals, I don't think we have the ability to, or I don't think it's worth our effort right now to do a brand awareness campaign, or it kind of helps sort of this shiny object syndrome that really appears with marketing and allows you to maintain that focus.
I mean, the other side of it is have you found some like cost effective tools or resources for that scrappy marketing team? Because I feel like you're going to need tools, but you got to pick and choose which tools will be effective for you. Which ones have you found to be the most cost effective for doing the job?
I think ClickUp is like any project management tool. You can really plan like those types of like specific marketing tech tools, like any project management system where you can really see what's ahead and easily prioritize. that is the best way, but I've done it in like Google Sheets. I've planned it all out. All you really need, it doesn't really matter what the specific tool you use, as long as your team is, as long as it's easily adoptable by your team, essentially. But you have to have the ability to plan ahead and see what's coming down the pipeline for marketing, and also to give yourself the ability to see everything from a big picture. I like to plan my strategies like when I'm actually doing the specific planning of what's going out when, what are we talking about, and kind of content outlines and all of that. I like to know what is happening with every channel and what's happening with our offerings, what's happening with other parts of the company in case that has to influence marketing in some way.
And so, I mean, could it be, you said ClickUp, but could it be like Notion or anything like that?
Yeah,
Because
any
I
type of
mean,
project planning a tool for sure. I personally would just use ClickUp.
that's fair. I mean, the main thing from what I'm getting is basically just being like super organized and knowing like you have a checklist each day and actually doing it, because the hard part of being organized is that you actually have to do it each day and be organized. I think that's the hardest part for a lot of people. Like, oh yeah, I got all this done. Wait, I have to do this every week now or every day. This is not, I'm not gonna like
I
this.
know. I know that's the hardest part. And I would say, like, and I've struggled with that too. And I would say it's less even about like, here's the to do list, check it off, make sure you're maintaining it. Like that alone is a job, right? That's why project managers exist, because it's hard. I would say it's more of the sentiment, right? It's how can you con- strengthen connection and communication amongst your team and awareness of what's happening with the company. How you do that is going to be dependent on the leader, dependent on the team, because everyone's different. Everyone organizes different. Like some people prefer post-it notes as their to-do list, right? Like it's not about the specifics necessarily. However, as the marketing leader, you should have a very clear ability to see what's happening with your team, to understand what's coming, what's going to be thrown at marketing, and how that's all going to impact. And then you can use tools like Notion, you can use even Miro, anything that can like where you can kind of map out or at least have, okay, even if it's a whiteboard in your office, this is what's going to happen and this is what we need to plan for. And so there is a little bit of that organization, but for the people who are really not organized, it's it really is how can you just stay in tune to what's going on. So that's enhancing maybe some communications with your team. That's asking questions around what's going on with the rest of the business. That's, just kind of being proactive in some areas. Just to kind of, even if you're not acting on it now, just to open your mind up to these other activities that may impact marketing.
Mhm. And how important is it to have diverse skill sets within your team? Because, I mean, sometimes we're like, why does everybody have the same skill set? I need people to actually like do different things that I can't do. So, how do you pick and choose that? Because it is difficult to figure out unless you know somebody their actual skill sets. And I think that's the hardest part is like, what can you effectively do? Don't tell me, show me.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's I will say this, like there's a small caveat in that what you focus on is going to be a little bit different, right? There are some companies where design really isn't a big deal for them, right? But then there are some companies where it is a really big deal. So I think that's where some of the caveats come into play is how specialized do people really need to be? Um, but I would say that again, kind of going back, if you do create a strategy and a plan ahead of time, you have more of an ability to predict this is where I think it's gonna take us a long time. So for instance, if you're planning a team around and you're gonna need some automations, how savvy is your current team if you're working with a bunch of generalists, for instance, to try to do that? Or is like maybe you're working with a bunch of copywriters, is anyone willing or able to get into like the tech mindset and really build things out? I think it's really understanding what if everyone's kind of generally quote unquote doing the same thing or have the same skill set, isolate what unique qualities they have within your team and potentially diversify that diversify their responsibilities in some shape or form. No one should be doing the same things. If you have a scrappy team, you can't afford to have someone do two people doing the same work unless it's a significantly heavy workload. But that actually creates more inefficiencies if you have people doing the same thing. So you've got two people creating content for things that really can be consolidated and have you be I'm going to be the copy person, you're going to be the tech person, right? So that's where you can kind of diversify. I think in terms of other skill sets and actually hiring, I it really is a matter of how specialized do they need to be, right? If you want someone to really build very advanced email automations and you're not able to give them direction, then you need someone highly specialized. But if as a marketing leader or business leader, you're able to provide a little bit more creative direction or guidance for them to execute, then they don't really need to be that specialized. They just need to be organized or be very clear about what their responsibility is and be willing to learn as they go.
And just to go along with that, is it also the decision between hiring full time or contract? Because you may sometimes just need a really short span of like somebody. So you just might want to hire a contractor instead of a full time employee because you may just want them to build out and that's all you need them to do. So, how do you distinguish between hiring the full time person and just hiring a freelancer slash contractor?
Yeah, I think that's also a great question. I would say that more and more companies are leaning towards contractors because marketing, but like you said at the beginning, marketing budgets are the first to get cut. They get like the bottom of the barrel budget so often. So I'm seeing a lot of companies now using virtual assistants, for instance, and I think it kind of goes back to the earlier point of you have to understand what hole you're filling, right? Like if you don't know what help you need, and sometimes we as marketers, because there's so much, you're like, I just need someone to help with everything. I have no idea, especially when your budget's so small. You just need like an extra set of hands. And you can do it that way, and you could try to find a generalist. And in that case, they should probably be full time, but I think if you're very clear about what's getting done, you have more freedom to say, you know what? I think we just need this contractor for X amount of time in a month, and they're going to focus on these primary tasks. But I think it's just a matter of, I think if you're looking to generalize people more, it's going to cost them more time. So therefore, they should be more full time, and ideally, you can hire in house so that they are completely dedicated to you. But a lot of people are going the contractor route and, working with them as much as they have capacity or setting up retainers with them to make sure that they at least can deliver specific things that are needed. So you can either go the hourly route or the retainer route with contractors a lot of the time. And that's where it's just a matter of how much support are you looking to fill.
What are some of the common pitfalls to avoid when building out that scrappy team? Because some people may be new. They're like, I don't know how to build a team. Like, what should I look for? And please help me avoid it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And so there's so many pitfalls with marketing, and that's the unfortunate part about our industry, right? There's a lot of people that claim they can do things, and then you get there and you're like, this is not what I expected it to be, or whatever that looks like, right? And I think that's where, as the leader, as the business leader in particular, you have to be, if you are not focused, then it is much harder for you to discern between what's actually going to work and what isn't. And marketing is one of those areas where people are kind of apprehensive around what they're spending because the results can sometimes feel very uncertain. But I think when you're hiring actual support, one, being extremely clear about what the expectations are of that role. Be very as organized as you can be. So that way, like, because there's going to be a learning curve no matter what, doesn't matter who you start with, right? There's always some of that sort of catch up that they need to do. The more you can be so crystal clear about what your expectations are, what the company is, what the offerings are, what they're supposed to do, the more that person has the ability to sort of find their place within a system already that is in motion, right? And so I think for in terms of avoiding specific pitfalls, look for the red flags with hiring. Look at especially in a creative environment, identify someone's work, like make sure to look at a portfolio, make sure that they have the either a range of styles or match a style that fits you and fits your aesthetic. Um, I think from a copy standpoint, right? Like all of these kind of creative, same thing. Do they have a range of tone? Are you looking for more short, succinct copywriting, or are you looking for long form content? There's like some questions to ask yourself. And then when it comes to like the tech or the generalist, it's you know that's where you want to find someone who's very organized, who has the ability to communicate. Get those red flags out of the way. If they show up late to the interview, that's a red flag. If they're not communicative about things, that's a red flag. Give them some potentially even some test projects if that's within reason, of course. I think those are some ways to kind of avoid that. Unfortunately, and then also to be willing, if you are hiring contractors, at least be willing to cut them if they're not working out. And I say that almost in a cutthroat way, but at the same time, you're just going to waste more money if someone really doesn't have the skill set or the personality to be willing to learn. So they have to be willing to learn and adapt to what's going to work for you.
And your boss is going to get mad at you saying, "Why are we spending this much money on someone that's not
Right.
producing anything?"
Right, exactly. They have to here's the thing, I think more and more, there are some people like don't always hire unless I'm hiring for a very specific thing that needs to be specialized. More and more people are or business leaders are willing to work with someone who has maybe a little bit less experience or skill set, but if their personality is one that they're driven, they're ambitious, they want to learn, they're curious, those end up being the best employees. And so I think there is that balance between what's needed now because sometimes you're willing to shape someone, but then it ends up costing you more to do that. So it is a balance, but I think just try to weed out the red flags as best as you possibly can.
And what are some like inspirational things to say for people going through this marketing budget cut? Because I'm pretty sure everybody's like, I don't know how I'm going to get all this stuff done by myself or with a very small team.
This is so cliche, but if there's a will, there's a way for sure. I think don't be afraid to cut things. Don't be afraid to say, you know what? We're going to do this, but not right now. Focus, identify. The first thing is to identify what is draining you, what's draining your team, what's draining your budget. Is it worth it? If it is, if you really see the long-term vision, you need to optimize it. If it's not right now, then put it on pause. You can always go back to something. I think that's the first step. And I think that's the hardest step too, because especially when you're working with business leaders that don't understand marketing, they're going to throw everything at you. Marketing is the catch all, and they're not going to understand what they're doing. So you really do need to like I like to use the approach of I understand where what you're trying to accomplish. Here are the barriers that we have to accomplish that. This is my suggestion. Become very solution oriented in the process, but I think you have a right to say we just simply don't have the capacity. You either give us more budget to hire more hands, or you be the leader and you give us the focus that we need.
So basically, what I'm hearing is the power of no.
The power of no, absolutely. Or the power of not right now is a little bit more palatable for some.
Yeah, the PR answer, not right now.
Yeah.
Anyways, people are listening to this episode and wondering where can they find you online to learn more.
So I have a website that has all the information that they probably need. So cultivatecommunications.com. Cultivate is spelled a little bit differently. It's CULTIVEIGHT. I'm also on LinkedIn and very active on LinkedIn. So if they want to add me, the username is C Crawford 22.
All right. Any final thoughts for listeners?
Hang in there. You got this.
All right. Thank you, Caroline, for joining Digital Coffee Marketing Brew and sharing your knowledge on just building a scrappy team with a small marketing budget.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
And thank you for listening. As always, please subscribe to this podcast on all your favorite podcasting apps. Leave a 5-star review. It really does help with the rankings. Let me know how I am doing. And join me next week as I talk to another great thought leader in the PR marketing industry. All right, guys, stay safe. Get to understanding your small marketing budget. Stay safe as well and stay sane. And see you next week. Later.